My name is Kate, and I am 40 years old. I've been married for 10 years to my husband, Mike, who is the same age as me and was a colleague at work. Although we're now in different branches, we used to be in the same department. Mike is a type with a strong sense of responsibility, admired by his subordinates. He's a bit of a show-off, seemingly unwilling to reveal his weaknesses to others. Confident and vibrant, he was the epitome of masculinity. His hard work is well regarded by his superiors, and he's expected to climb the career ladder without any issues. In contrast, I'm more of a low-key, unassuming type. Since our personalities are polar opposites, I was genuinely surprised when he passionately pursued me. 2 years into our relationship, Mike proposed to me with a large bouquet of roses. Having never been so loved by a man, I accepted immediately, excited for a beautiful future ahead. However, what awaited me was living with my in-laws, which hadn't been discussed beforehand. Though I wanted to refuse, Mike was adamant about it. My parents are decent people. It'll be fine, he insisted, excitedly explaining how much his parents were looking forward to living with me. Reluctantly, I couldn't say no and have been living with them for the past 10 years. Life there was beyond anything I could have imagined at the start of our marriage. Kate, you forgot to clean the entrance again? My mother-in-law would begin after I'd finished preparing breakfast for everyone. It's a daily ritual. I'm sorry, I'd reply. Just saying sorry doesn't cut it. If you understand, then do it right now, she'd scold, treating me like a servant, even though I had to go to work. For 10 years, I've been waking up at 5 a.m., forced to prepare breakfast and clean. I always thought, why doesn't she do it herself when she's home all day? Despite being a housewife with time on her hands, she does none of the housework. After rushing through the morning chores, I go to work, then come home to cook dinner. By the time I get to my bedroom, I'm so exhausted I fall asleep immediately. This constant routine has left me worn out and often unwell, probably due to stress. I don't want the neighbors to think we're slackers, so clean properly, she'd say, relaxing in the living room after breakfast I made. Better finish quickly, or you'll be late for work. Watching this, Mike never stood up for me, not once. My father-in-law, hidden behind his newspaper, would also pretend not to see. Since moving in with my in-laws, I've been severely bullied. The stress caused my weight to plummet and my appearance to deteriorate. You're so skinny and unsightly. No wonder you can't produce an heir, they'd taunt. Suddenly losing weight, I stopped menstruating and couldn't conceive. Though it's because of my mother-in-law, she continuously blames me. Before marriage, I was moderately concerned about my appearance and healthy. Now, I'm just a shadow of my former self. Depressed by the stress of the bullying and the shock of my reflection in the mirror, I've become utterly submissive to my mother-in-law. Feeling listless, I can't even muster the will to leave this house. At that time, I received some tragic news. My father had suddenly passed away in an accident. Desiring to visit my family home, I hadn't done so for a long time, as my mother-in-law and husband would scold me whenever I mentioned it. Receiving news of my father's death, I deeply regretted not seeing him more often. My family home is only about an hour's drive from my in-laws. Not too far, so I asked my mother-in-law and husband to attend my father's funeral. There's my father's funeral. Oh, we're not going, she quickly cut in. Just keep it within the family, my husband added. I hadn't expected them to be this heartless. I could only respond with a tremble in my voice, understood. Many people attended my father's funeral. He had been self-employed and interacted with numerous people. Everyone there was in tears, showing how much he was loved. Kate, it's been so long, but what happened to you? You've lost so much weight. My mother, seeing me after a long time, was shocked by my emaciated appearance. It's just a little thing. You're not sick, are you? I can't bear to lose you too, she cried, thinking I had some illness. It was understandable, given she had just lost her husband. I'm not sick. Don't worry, I reassured her, taking a break in the resting room. If you're not sick, then what happened? I remembered my interactions with my mother-in-law and husband. They hadn't offered a single word of comfort upon hearing of my father's death. Feeling a rising anger, I decided to tell my mother about my life at my in-laws. Actually, I've been experiencing what you'd call bullying by my in-laws. I'm just so tired. As I spoke, looking down, my mother peered into my face with concern. I'm glad you're not sick, but that doesn't reassure me at all. Is that why you haven't visited much? Yes. I nodded, and my mother handed me a piece of paper. Read this for yourself. After that, think carefully about what you'll do next. The paper she handed me was my father's will. He had left a will, being a meticulous man, in case something happened. It included details about the inheritance. Inherit $2 million. $2 million? It's as written. You can decide how to use it, she said. Shocked by the amount, I was filled with hope. With this, I could build a house and leave my in-laws immediately. My father's inheritance seemed to brighten my future. I returned to my in-laws' house and continued my usual chores. On days I had plans to go out, the house would be messier than usual. With no one to clean, it was inevitable. Silently doing housework, I pondered over the $2 million I inherited from my father. Despite my aversion to my mother-in-law, I wanted to stay with my husband. I decided to honestly discuss the inheritance and propose moving out of the in-laws' house. I have something to talk about. After my in-laws had gone to bed, I started the conversation when it was just my husband and me. A talk? Yes, about my father. Actually, I've inherited his estate. Oh? How much? It's $2 million. When I mentioned the amount, my husband was visibly shocked. What, really? Yes, $2 million. As he processed what I said, he became overjoyed. Wow, he left us that much? That's great. So, about how to use this money. I was about to discuss my plans, but before I could, my husband said something unthinkable. Then we need to transfer that money into my mother's account right away. I couldn't understand what he meant. It was so absurd, I thought it was a joke. No, why? It's my inheritance, so that's not right. As I laughed it off, my husband slammed his hand on the table. What are you talking about? A wife's money belongs to her mother-in-law, doesn't it? He seemed completely serious, and it frightened me. I'm sorry, I don't understand what you mean. I just wanted to talk about building a house for us. Instead, he wanted to claim my inheritance for his mother. That night, I was too shocked to sleep. The next morning, while making breakfast, my husband and mother-in-law confronted me angrily. Kate, I heard. You inherited $2 million and you're not giving it to me? What are you saying, as a daughter-in-law? My mother-in-law had already heard about the inheritance from my husband. But I'm the one who inherited it. Just transfer it to my parents' account, without any more excuses. A wife's money is the family's money, right? They seemed intent on forcibly taking the inheritance. No matter how much I refused, they just blamed me. Realizing resistance was futile, I stayed silent. Then, my husband showed me a piece of paper. Don't get cocky just because you came into some money. I've been supporting you, and this is the attitude I get? If you don't change your mind, we're getting divorced. The paper was a divorce application, already signed by him. Take this and go back to your parents' house. If you apologize properly, maybe I won't divorce you. I took the divorce application, filled out by my husband. As I looked at it, memories flooded back. I had never been supported by this family. I paid equal shares of the living expenses and did all the housework. They never took care of me but always looked down on me. Now, they were even trying to take my father's money. If I stayed, I might give in to their pressure and hand over the inheritance. But this money was left for me by my father. Being told to return to my family home, I saw it as an opportunity. Holding the completed divorce application, I realized I had the power to decide my future. I vowed never to hand over my father's inheritance and made up my mind. That day, after work, I returned to my family home. I'm home. Welcome back. I had a feeling you'd be coming home soon. She welcomed me back warmly, smiling gently at my weary self. The table was set with her home-cooked meals. It had been so long since I ate food made by someone else. Tears welled up in my eyes from the deliciousness of the warm meal. Did you tell your husband about the inheritance? Yes, and things got complicated. I told my mother everything that my husband and mother-in-law had said. She was astounded by the shocking details. The inheritance is yours, and you decide your future, she comforted me as I cried. After staying a week at my family home, I decided to return to my in-laws. I'm heading back now. Take care. I felt no fear returning to that house. I approached my in-laws' house with a refreshing feeling. Finally back, huh? Learned your lesson? My husband and mother-in-law were waiting, arms crossed. Yes, I'm sorry. Please let me stay in this house again. I offered a superficial apology. My mother-in-law smirked. Then hurry up and hand over the inheritance. Actually, the inheritance procedures are taking time. It hasn't reached me yet. It's complicated and might take more than 6 months. That long, huh? Well, fine. My mother-in-law and husband seemed satisfied, thinking I'd obediently hand over the inheritance. But soon, they started nagging me incessantly about my week-long absence at home. You didn't do your duties as a wife, and look at the mess in the house. Clean it up. The house was in a chaotic and unhygienic state after just a week. I thought it almost a talent to make such a mess in a short time. Understood. The old me would have been deeply upset by such a sight. But now, it didn't matter to me at all, whether it was the mistreatment from my mother-in-law or the demanding chores. I did as I was told, handling all the household work. Then, 10 months passed. It was my mother-in-law's birthday. I'm heading out. Keep the house clean, she instructed as she usually went on a trip on her birthday, never taking me along. By the way, did you receive the inheritance yet? It's supposed to come in today. Perfect timing. That $2 million will be a present for her birthday. Make sure to transfer it to her account before we get back. Of course, it was impossible for the inheritance to coincidentally arrive on my mother-in-law's birthday. My husband didn't see through my lie. I didn't respond but just smiled and saw them off. Have a safe trip. Once they were out of sight, I started executing my plan, which I had been waiting for all this time. They would surely be surprised when they returned from their trip. But it was no longer my concern. I quickly packed my things and left my in-laws' house behind. Wow! This is amazing! I was moving my belongings into my new house, which I had built with my father's inheritance. It's so wonderful to live in such a beautiful house. I had decided to live there with my mother. I'm truly happy I don't have to worry about those people anymore. Sinking into the plush sofa, I felt utterly content. Today was a celebration of the new house with my mother. We invited a chef and spent a luxurious day. The next evening, my husband called. What's going on? He must have been confused upon returning home to find all my belongings gone. I won't be returning there. Goodbye. As I was about to hang up, my mother-in-law shouted from the other end. How dare you, as a daughter-in-law? Where are you now? I cannot tell you that. You told me to clean the house, so I tidied up my things. That's a terrible joke. And you haven't transferred the inheritance. A daughter-in-law's money is mine. Excuse me? I'm single. When I responded, my mother-in-law suddenly went silent. Single. Well, technically divorced. You gave me the divorce papers, so I submitted them. We are now strangers. Goodbye. I hung up, imagining her stunned expression and couldn't stop laughing. Being free from that family brought immense relief to my heart. My ex-husband kept calling, but I only answered when I had time, letting their abusive words wash over me. I recorded all these calls. I decided to take the recordings to the police. Harassment from an ex-husband is not uncommon. We'll issue a warning before it escalates. Fortunately, the police responded quickly and warned my former in-laws. The arrival of the police was a significant blow to them, especially given their concern for appearances. Moreover, one of my ex-husband's subordinates saw the police visit and the gossip spread rapidly. His colleagues, who didn't think highly of him, exaggerated the story. Soon, the rumors reached my department. Did you hear about the police visiting? I wouldn't know, I'm divorced now. Divorced? Really? Yes. The mother-in-law's bullying and husband's verbal abuse were too much. I spoke loud enough for others to hear. The gossiping employees spread the story further. It wasn't long before my ex-husband's supervisor heard the rumors. I've heard some unpleasant rumors about you. I'm not sure what you're referring to. I despise men who can't treat their wives well. And such bad rumors tarnish our company's reputation. Therefore, you're being transferred. The transfer order for my ex-husband was to a harsh location. Here? But this is... It was to a remote branch with the worst performance, known as a desolate place with no entertainment. You understand what this transfer means, right? Everything he had built up was collapsing, with no prospects for promotion. My ex-husband had no choice but to accept the transfer and move. As for his mother, she was shocked by her son's downfall and inability to live with her. She became a recluse and developed depression, possibly even dementia, often causing trouble at home. His father is desperately caring for his changed wife. Even though we're not related by blood, a daughter-in-law is still an important part of the family. What happened to my former in-laws is simply the result of their continuous harassment towards me coming back to them. Now, I am happily living with my mother. We've even started gardening in our spacious yard. I would never have discovered such a wonderful hobby if I had stayed in that house. Having a hobby has rejuvenated my spirit. The stress that once wore me down is gone, and I'm now healthier than ever. I'm so happy to have severed ties with my former in-laws.